Hello and welcome back to Show Home Live. I'm Joseph, the editor of Show Home magazine. And on this exclusive interview, I'm joined by Matt Nicol, who is the founder and managing director of Nicol Co. Matt, could we begin by you giving us an overview of your professional career to date, and also by outlining what or who Nicol Co are?
Yeah, super. So I'm Matt Nicol. I set up Nicol Co estate agents back in October 2009. So came out of a pretty sticky recession and decided it was a good time to go on my own. I'd worked as an estate agent for a good independent. Prior to that, I'd been an agent for 5 years. And I was a branch manager for them during the recession. So it felt like in 2009 that the market turned back on, and I opened the doors in October. Started with a small branch in Droitwich Spa in the Midlands. And then I opened another office in Worcester, and now I have an office in Droitwich, Worcester, and also in Malvern. I employ 38 staff. We have residential sales, a land and new homes department, a lettings department, and also a marketing arm to the business as well. And just getting into our 15th year. In terms of some of our highlights, I guess you'd say, we were just chosen to be the best estate agents, best sales agency 2024. In the Best Estate Agents Guide. So a massive accolade for us. There's over 13,000 estate agency businesses out there. So to think that we won that was quite a result that we found out in November.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations on that achievement. So you have a strong connection with the new build sector, which is interesting because I think a large majority or many people still associate estate agencies with older builds as opposed to new builds. So why do you think that is? And is this something that you think is changing?
Yeah, I think, when I started out, I predominantly was just in the secondhand market, and it's probably the main part of the turnover for our business. But I think there's a lot of complementary skills that come from a residential sales business into new home sales as well. I've actually written a bit of a list of the kind of the things that I think that we bring to the table and the difference that it happens. But for me, it was a really interesting part to the business. I love working with developers. I love it when they take on board your comments and they, listen to what buyers are looking for. And I think that really helps them to build something that people want to purchase, which is, I think, part of the problem sometimes, that they can build something that looks great on plan, but the market demand's not there. So working closely with an agent, we can bring a lot to the table.
I think that's definitely one of the standout benefits, the fact that you work so closely with the home buyer, and therefore you're able to really listen to what they are looking for and then pass this on to the developer. You mentioned that you have a list of benefits. So what are some of the other reasons that you would recommend new build developers work with estate agencies?
Well, I didn't think I'd get the opportunity for this audience very often, so I've written them down, and there's 10 of them. So firstly, starting off with a larger buyer pool. So ultimately, if you're advertising the site, even if you're just choosing to use portals or site signage, stack signage, you've only got those people that come in directly to you, whereas an estate agency will be registering buyers for their residential stock at the same time. We often find that a buyer that comes to you looking at 1 3-bed detached will often then be persuaded into viewing other properties, and having a relationship with a developer works really, really well. I'm sat here on a Spitfire site, and we found that a lot of people that come to us and registered looking for a property from our residential sales team in Droitwich have actually been persuaded to come over and have a look at site, and often have been impressed that they weren't necessarily thinking new build, but there's lots of benefits to it. There's also an existing database. So we've been going for nearly 15 years. So we've got about 50,000 people on our database. My offices are Droitwich, Worcester and Malvern. So in the Worcestershire area, where people have been moving into and are moving around in this area, they are a database that we can contact. So when a new site launches, there could be someone who's been in the same home for 4 or 5 years, not really looking, but the minute something lands that actually takes their fancy, just gets the cogs turning. So we can kind of get in front of buyers ahead of actually a property going to launch on a portal. We can give credibility to an unknown developer. So sometimes our reputation in the locations, and I'd hope that we've got it here in Worcestershire, is well thought of. So new developers coming into the area, by associating themselves with us or us associating ourselves with them, it probably gives a bit more kind of credibility to that developer, that they are someone to probably go and look at and possibly purchase from. Social media reach. We've organically grown our social media over the last 15 years. We've got over 8,000 people on Facebook, close to 3,000 people on Instagram, plus YouTube channels and bits and pieces. And if you're setting up a site from when the stack signs go up and you start building to when you finish, you might have 2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years, and you can't really build an organic growth in that timescale. So actually, by working with an estate agency who already knows people, your marketing that you provide to them or the marketing they provide for your site can then get out to the kind of the local community. And we found it's really starting to work for us now. Some of the videos that we've started producing have led to people commenting people's names, and obviously it's not them looking, but the friend that they tagged in is looking. So we're getting them almost to help with our marketing because they're tagging in friends or colleagues that they know are looking for properties. We can lighten the workload of a developer. So we've got specific full-time staff who are new homes sales specialists. So if a site's busy, we can come and help on days when they need us. We can help do a bit of cover if required, but also phoning through databases. It can be an arduous task to get through a list of 200 people. But when you split it down, you've got an agent that works alongside you. You can get through those numbers a little bit easier. I mentioned earlier also we've got a marketing department, but we've got a marketing manager, a videographer, professional photographer. We've got someone who produced our digital content. We've also got a virtual assistant in Manila. So we can basically bring the whole marketing package for a developer who would be spending £150,000 on overheads to get that many staff in. We bring that to the table. And again, but going back to my original point of we kind of know what the buyers are looking for. We can market to that as well. We can make sure that we're picking the right points out. I mentioned it already, development consultancy, but I think that is a part of it, that we can advise what we know the buyers are looking for. It's an ever-changing landscape. We know what people are trying to avoid in their new homes purchases and what they're trying to find in their new home purchases. And sometimes, even at the stage where we've been given a drawing to give pricing advice, we could turn around and say, do you know what, that's a location that needs a few more bungalows. I'd try and swap out the flats for 2-bed houses. It's a starter home area. That kind of information can be quite useful to the land manager or the land director who's really kind of thinking, what offer can I put forward to make us be the winner on this site? Obviously, then we work closely with the sales managers and the sales directors to make sure that we're delivering the right strategy to get the properties out there. That might be, where do we advertise it? Where do we market it? Where do we need to invest the budget from leaflet drops? Part exchanges, seeing more and more part exchanges now as well. And working closely with an agency, I think you can get a better answer and advice on what is a good part exchange property, or if it's going to be one of these assisted moves or concierge services, Spitfire offer. Honest advice on what's likely to happen with that property. If it goes to the market too much money, you normally get a couple of valuations, but you want some, if it was your house, Matt, where would you price it? What would be your advice? I think a lot of developers have been using third parties for that, and it's not really the best way to do it, because if you have a direct relationship with an estate agent, you're going to find that they're going to give you the honest answers. A third party, when they're out there, they're essentially clipping themselves in a fee. And so the agents they end up using are probably ones that are getting a low fee for it, and they're not going to give the best advice. We can also, I think, help financially with a lot of developers. So we're not an overhead to you unless we're selling properties, which is a good thing anyway. That's the result you're after. So we're not another person on your payroll. We're not another 28 days holiday each year. We're not PAYE and all those bits and pieces. So there's a few savings there. And I think we found a good relationship with some of our clients where we've taken land to them. And you could be first to get contacted about a site that actually you wouldn't have known about anyway. And we've done some successful one-to-one deals where we haven't let the site get out and get hawked around by everyone. It's gone directly to a developer who we would know would be right for the land seller. And then the final point, because I think a lot of people kind of see agents as just a commodity sometimes, we can save you money on portal spend, because ultimately we do have accounts with the likes of On the Market and Rightmove where I know developers have to pay a lot of money to advertise on there. And if you're a small developer, it's probably a cost too big to bear. But if you're a big developer and you've got multiple sites up and down the country, it costs an absolute fortune. So you actually have that cost saving as well. So yeah, I just think for developers, obviously I have my chance there on my pedestal to talk through 10 points, but I think the earlier you can engage with an agent, the better. I think that helps everyone, because you will end up building something that the market requires and needs. And also a lot of your kind of planning can be worked out better. And I think it's just about factoring the agency fees at the beginning, because we as an agent wouldn't work on a referral only basis. We can't do everything we do having to look over our shoulders whether we're going to get paid a fee or not. We need to make sure that we are aligned with people. So that's why we find that kind of the association, the full agency service works. And then we pour our hearts and soul into it. We really go to town on it for our developers.
Well, thank you for pointing out all of those benefits. I think it was definitely clear that there's a lot to be gained for housing developers by collaborating or working with estate agencies. And thank you as well for clarifying the fact that you are actually in a show home. It's not a very good AI system that you're using. Um, I'd like to take more advantage of the fact that you do work so closely with potential buyers by talking about some of their demands. So, what are some of the main demands that you're hearing from them currently? And do you think that these demands are changing, or have they changed over recent years?
Yeah, I think the word of the day probably is energy efficiency. I think that's probably the big factor. We know obviously the costs of borrowing have gone up significantly over the last 18 months, and energy costs have gone up significantly as well. So I think if you are making a move, one thing that you do hope to get from it is, or a buyer hopes to get from it, is that their overall bills and spend is going to reduce due to kind of the insulation, the properties of the property, or things like air source heat pumps, as we have here at Faber with Spitfire. So I think that's probably a big thing that buyers are looking for. The right space as well. Heard it's called right sizing once instead of a downsize. So they're looking for the right size rooms. They don't necessarily need to have a big third bedroom, but they'd like to still have a big principal bedroom with an ensuite and a dressing area. So I think more and more developers are latching on to the fact that if we are appealing to someone who's downsizing from a large 4-bedroom detached house where the values almost might be similar, it's not a monetary gain, but the energy efficiency they get from it, the fact that they've got all the warranties and guarantees, those are the things that really people are looking for.
And you've just touched upon kind of leading into my next question, which was going to be actually the demand for sustainability and energy efficiency. Do you think that this is a demand that stems more from the consumer, the homeowner, or from the housing developer, or would you say it's a sort of evenly spread between the two? Perhaps housing developers feel the pressures from government initiatives, and therefore there's a huge demand from them.
I think it's the latter. To be honest, I think it's planning authorities are having the governance to say that they really need to be looking for more energy efficiency routes, and things like air source heat pumps, solar panels, and bits and pieces come at a very significant cost to a developer. Then they're not easy to just install, and that obviously has a bit of an impact on the values they need to achieve with the property. Obviously, the EPC rating reflects an improved performance, but I do think it's more kind of government plan that they're trying to make these properties more efficient. Of course, there are massive benefits to that. We can't have an endless supply of gas and stuff like that. So renewable energy is an important way of doing things. I think people, the public, buyers, consumers that I'm speaking to, they're starting to learn more about ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, photovoltaic PV panels have always been kind of, there was a period of time probably about 10 years ago where people hated solar panels. They were dead against them. But now I think a lot of people are really in search of them. And I guess it's that education and also that fear that the costs are going to go up. They're not going to get any lower. So people want to do whatever they can to reduce those figures.
And moving into the area of sales, what do you think are the key driving forces for pushing up the sales of new build homes?
Let's be honest, you reduce a lot of the stress because you are chain free. So that's a beautiful thing, because we have a lot of, through no one's fault, open-ended chains at the moment where our vendor has sold their property, their buyer has sold their property, but our vendor needs to find, or they found a house and they need to find. So the open-ended chains in this market are quite a frustration for a lot of people. So the beauty of a new build is that it's the end of the line. It's the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's one of the things. I think also reduced hassle. If we own a property, we've all realised that in the last 5 years, we've made a significant increase in our value. So at least 20%, in most cases, 25% increase in value. So although part exchange or a concierge might nibble a little bit into your equity, it's an inflated equity that we've all achieved anyway. So there's that kind of that reduced hassle that you haven't got to go through the whole process. So people that want to do a part exchange, I think they take it for what it is, that they've had an inflated price. They haven't necessarily invested more in it. It's just gone up in value. So therefore, part exchange offer that may feel cheeky actually is very, very good news for them. The guarantees, the warranties, maintenance free. I know for me, busy man, not very good with a hammer. I would prefer the fact that everything's done for me and done to a very high standard. And I think on that point, if you want to extend the property, if you want to update a kitchen, I've done it in the last few years, that's getting expensive, obviously, because of the cost of materials. It's almost better to bite the bullet, dare I say, but sell. That's obviously good news for me, but sell your home and move to a new home because you haven't got all those kind of costs that are just going to ramp up. And I think this site shows it, that this is a rare opportunity to buy in this village. Obviously, as a village, is a very, very popular location. Houses don't come up here often enough because people that live here and have managed to buy a house here, they don't really move. They tend to kind of live here because it's got, great doctors, dentists, and all those facilities. So a new home site like this with 45 units, that appeals to people because it's their chance to get into the village. So sometimes the developer is creating those opportunities that people who have been desperate to move to a location then get. So I guess they know they have to pay a bit of a premium for all of those qualities. It's worth the investment, but those are some of the factors I think that buyers are really kind of motivated by on buying a new build.
And continuing with the theme of increasing sales opportunities, how important, from your experience, is the development show home for securing more sales?
I think it's pretty critical, to be fair. We have gone through a time where 2020, 2021, it was really a seller's market. So buyers were doing anything they could to purchase. And the sellers, the developers held the cards. But now it feels like a bit more of a buyer's market where buyers are very conscious of what everything's going to cost. So they need to fall in love. They need to be inspired by the property. I think we're seeing an emergence of more show homes. This one's fitted out by Open Door Interiors, which is a popular name. Also view homes as well on site. So a buyer can actually physically walk around, see the finish, and understand what the sanitary ware is going to be in those homes. I think is quite important. We're doing little bits and pieces with some of our other stock where we are, with a view home, we are imposing CGI furniture so people can, from an image point of view, envisage where the sofa would go, but it's not created image. It's actually a photo with the furniture included into it. But a show home, I think there's a very strong place for them in developments because you've got to make sure your property stands out because a buyer may come to you and then go off and view another 10 properties and you want to make sure that yours has really left a mark on the person. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that show homes will always have a place in this market.
And moving into the final section of the interview, I wanted to speak as well about the challenges that I'll say house builders and also homeowners might be facing. What do you think are the main challenges facing house builders across the UK at the moment?
So I think the main issues that they're facing are probably related to planning. I think planning authorities are all understaffed, unfortunately. I also don't feel that probably the staff that do work there are probably paid at the right salary. So we're finding that the level of service is lacking somewhat. It sounds like there's obviously going to be a big push for more brownfield sites, which I think is going to be a positive. We need to see more of those emerging because there really is a shortage of homes being built. There's also more hoops to jump through. So water neutrality and nutrient neutrality, there's things like that are coming in that it's just more boxes to tick and more things to fulfill. And I'm hoping now that with the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act that was passed in October, we're going to start to see a bit of a quicker turnaround. I think that's probably one thing that everyone's very frustrated with. I don't think the cost for materials is as bad, maybe shot down on that one, but I think it's starting to level off. I think there's a shortage of supply, obviously, due to COVID and due to the fact we were trying to get as much built as we could. But I think that's kind of stemmed slightly, but we've got to be very aware, and it will impact you developers because Help to Buy is no longer available. Stamp duty incentives have been removed. Mortgage borrowing is now a lot higher than it used to be in terms of the interest rates. They might start with a 3 very rarely, but they're 4% plus, and people are able to enjoy a lot lower fees. That will impact what buyers are willing to spend. I think it's going to have a bit of an impact in terms of settling into that mindset that prices are just that little bit too expensive for some. So we've seen it on other developments, not on this one, but we've seen it on other developments where sites have been built, finished, and they've been sat without a single purchaser. Thankfully, we've only got 3 left here, but if you caught a cold at the beginning, you've got to react and get something to happen, because otherwise you could be there into the summer and then a new site comes up, which takes away a lot of the new buyers because they've been priced in such a way that it reflects what the market's doing there and then. So I'm sure it's not an easy thing for sales directors to get their head round, but Ultimately, you don't want stock sitting there with staff on site and all the costs that go with it.
And just to finish off, Matt, what are your predictions for how the new build sector is going to evolve over the coming months and the coming years?
I think there'll be continued and more renewable energy ideas, and I assume there'll be more kind of ground source heat pumps appearing and bits and pieces. I think that's going to be one of the ways. Probably that's going to raise the standard in terms of what the public understand about it. I think that's going to be quite positive. I mentioned it earlier, but hopefully there'll be more brownfield sites developed. So sites that are sat that don't actually have anything on them. There was an exercise done by Dataloft that said there was 26,000 sites in the UK, which was offering up over 34,500 hectares of land, and that could deliver 1 million homes. So I think those brownfield sites that have been sat there, and we all drive past them, unfortunately garages that have gone pop and things like that. I think those are the opportunities that probably will start to come through. I've seen it probably in the last 2 years, and probably going to see more of it going forward. But how more housing associations coming into the market, sometimes supported with Homes England money. They really are a big player now, and they are bringing in a second brand. So it's not just a housing association brand; they've got a second brand which complements it, and that's proven to be quite successful in some of the key locations local to us. I'm hoping for a steadier market, less up and downs. Government, whichever government it ends up being, I think there needs to be some more incentives for first-time buyers. There needs to be something that's going to support first-time buyers. Help to Buy, it had its positives and its negatives, I think, but at least it did give the developers an edge on residential sales. And it gave buyers a chance to kind of really stretch themselves a little bit further. And I certainly, if I was advising my son when he gets to the age of buying, I wouldn't go for the small one straight away. I try and stretch myself and try and get to that next level up. So I'm going to move twice. No good news for an estate agent, but I'd want to make sure I was stretching for the right house, slightly larger than I wanted originally. So I'm hoping it will be a strong market for everyone. It feels like a more positive market at the moment. Buyer activity since January has been a lot stronger than it was January last year, because we had trust quartile moments in September 2022. We came into 2023 in a rough state, but 2024 has been really, really strong. It seems to be very, very, very positive. So yeah, I wish everyone who's watching this interview a busy year.
I think that positivity that you've just mentioned is a great note to end on. So thank you once again, Matt, for joining us at Show Home Live.
Thanks, Joseph.